In the mid-80s, the F4 Force got an invite to go out, and in 1987, I think it was, we sent the first 92 Squadron Detachment, or joint 92-19 Squadron Detachment from Germany. The benefit of Red Flag is the size of the exercise, location and the nature of what you do. So if you think about what we were doing in the 80s, UK-based squadrons would have most of their day-to-day stuff in training, so they'd be doing 4 ships or pairs, fighting internally in the squadron, fighting themselves. If you were doing affiliation, you'd have to organise it with another squadron, so maybe ring up a GR squadron, do some affiliation. You did a lot of upper air work, a lot of low-level work. If you wanted to do anything more, large exercises, large scenarios where you were fighting a complex battle, then there were some exercises organised, but they were mostly UK defence over the sea and a much larger context. So large, complex missions weren't really being flown that much in the 80s. If you move across to Germany, the Germany squadrons had a completely different operation. They did a little bit of upper air work. Most of the stuff they did was down at low level. It was the air defence of the German mainland, along with NATO and everybody else, and it was orientated primarily at anti-Soviet low-level aggression, so it was all low-level air defence. What we needed and hadn't got was a broad spectrum exercise that covered everything from high level, medium level, live bombing, live ingress, and a realistic Soviet enemy. And that's what Red Flag was designed to provide, and the UK got invited out to it. So I got involved in the second deployment out to Red Flag with the Phantom, which was 1988. 19 and 92 squadrons deployed 8 aeroplanes across the Atlantic. To get ready for it, we had to kind of step out a little bit because our role was UK low-level air defence, sorry, Germany low-level air defence. We didn't do much tanking. We didn't do a huge amount of upper air work. So the workup involved tanking, so we could get out there, get back, and every Red Flag mission had tanking either before or after the sortie. So you could get to and from the exercise area and have enough fuel to fight, or lots of fuel to fight. And then we'd do some work with the E3s, because out there in Germany, we basically did low-level air defence autonomously on a cap, knowing roughly where the enemy would come from the east, and we'd have a gap normally between the Patriot belt or the Nike Hawk belt, and would have our area of responsibility and our direction to fight. So the amount of control you needed was really small. For the Red Flag exercises, you needed to have an active control of what was going on, so you needed to work with the E3 predominantly. So we would do a lot of work with the E3 and work up. We'd do some air-to-air combat, get used to some dissimilar stuff, maybe work with the NATO F-16s. Nice. So in the month before the exercise, we did lots of 4-ship size exercises, 4v4, 4v6, 4v8, 4v maybe something a little bit bigger, particular elements to get worked up. The squadron would then pick its crews. Most people wanted to go on Red Flag, but when you have a sortie that's, a profile of exercise that's going to run 2 4-ships each day, potentially a 6th ship at the end, you need 2 separate waves of crews to do that, so that's 8 crews. Each wave needs a supervising crew, so that's 10 crews altogether. The squadron only had 14 to 16 crews, depending on how it was. 2 crews would be in the Falklands, and 1 or 2 crews would probably be on leave or maybe detached somewhere. So in effect, there wasn't a selection process for Red Flag. The squadron just took everybody that was available, and that pretty much filled the aeroplanes. And indeed, I was on one of the second Red Flags I did with the F4. We were 1 crew short, so 1 crew was kind of hopping from wave to wave. That made for some really long days.